The Hindi name for the month of Ramzan should have been Ramadan. So why isn't it? The word Ramzan came into Hindi and Urdu from Persian, which in turn borrowed it from Arabic. But this doesn't quite add up because the modern standard Arabic version of this word is Ramadan, which means Persian could have easily borrowed it as something like Ramadan. And yet it didn't. What gives? In this video, we'll solve this mystery by taking a closer look at the sound of the D in Ramadan. And what we'll discover is that this unusual sound, which sounds like a cross between a Z and an L, lies at the heart of the solution. Let's start by unpacking the Arabic word Ramadan. In Arabic, the D sound in this word is written using a letter called Dad. The sound this letter represents in standard Arabic today is a velarised D, which simply means that you have to raise the back of your tongue while producing it. So in standard Arabic, it's not Ramadan, it's Ramadan. For convenience, let's call this sound the fancy D. Now, despite being different from a normal D sound, the fancy D does sound quite similar, doesn't it? So our original point still stands. Why didn't Persian borrow Ramadan as Ramadan? But what if this letter had a radically different pronunciation in the 7th century CE when Islam first began to spread beyond the Arabian Peninsula? If this older pronunciation was closer to a Z sound than a D sound, then that would explain why Persian borrowed Ramadan with a Z sound. And indeed, there are several pieces of evidence that support this idea. First, in the early centuries of Islam, several Arabic grammarians explicitly described the correct pronunciation of Dad as involving the sides of the tongue. In phonetics, such sounds are called laterals. The L sound is the most common such sound. Secondly, some languages that borrowed Dad-containing Arabic words in the early centuries of Islam used the letter L to represent the sound of Dad, which also suggests that it was a lateral. And lastly, to this day, there are several Quranic recitation traditions that use a lateral pronunciation of Dad. Putting this and other evidence together, scholars have concluded that in the early centuries of Islam, Dad probably represented a sound that's technically known as, brace yourself for this, a velarized voiced alveolar lateral fricative, which linguists transcribe like this. What did it sound like? Like this. Za. This means that at that time, modern-day Ramadan was actually pronounced something like Ramazan. This sound is a bit like a Z, but if you listen to it with the auditory equivalent of a squint, it also sort of sounds like an L because they're both lateral sounds. So let's call this sound the lateral Z. And with this, we finally have everything we need to solve the mystery we began with. When Iranians first encountered the word for Ramadan, it must have had a lateral Z rather than a fancy D. In other words, the word they encountered was probably Ramazan. They then borrowed this word as Ramazan, which eventually became Ramzan in Hindi and Urdu. And then later, the lateral Z changed into the fancy D in several important varieties of Arabic, which is why the name of the month in modern standard Arabic is Ramadan. So there you have it. Why do Hindi Urdu have Ramzan instead of Ramadan? Because the word came from Ramazan, not Ramadan. If you enjoyed this video, do share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in languages and linguistics.